Hello, hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special live here on ESPN Cricket Info. I'm Alexis Nunes, and it's for a very special occasion and a very, very special bowler. Jimmy Anderson, England's hero, has taken 600 test wickets. We were wondering when he would finally, and if we would finally get to see him, given the weather that's been going on in Southampton during this test series against Pakistan, but he's managed to do it, and his 600th scalp is none other than Azhar Ali, the Pakistani captain himself. Despite his heroic efforts earlier on in this test, he will now go down in history as that 600th test wicket for Jimmy Anderson. No other fast bowler has managed to do exactly what this man has done just about 2 weeks after he turned 38 years old. But like I say, like fine wine, age ain't nothing but a number. And speaking of very fine wine, I've got two gentlemen myself here with me. One who's having a cup of tea, and he probably might need something stronger considering how Pakistan are doing. But George Dubell, let us start with you, because you've been my boy throughout this entire summer that we have been watching Jimmy Anderson in the test series against the West Indies and the test series now against Pakistan. And I feel like more often than not, we've had to come to his defense. And now that here it is in your face, everyone, at 38 years old, he has managed to write his name deeper into history and legendary status. How are you feeling as an Englishman, as a lover of the game, and as someone who I know has covered Jimmy Anderson for very long?
I think the overwhelming emotion at ground was relief. Honestly, they looked really tense. You might even say a little bit grumpy. Right before it happened, he looked really tense, and I think they're just really relieved to get it out of the way and just move on with his career, which is what I think he'll say afterwards. I think he'll just say, "I'm looking ahead." And yeah, there was a bit of speculation about his future after the first test of match stuff, because he bowled a bad spell which lasted for 3 overs. And we're so not used to him doing anything like that there were questions, when you bowl a bad spell when you're 25, you're raw or unfit or something. And if you do it when you're 38, you're finished. That's what people think. But, he's answered all the questions here. He took a fiver in the first innings. He's bowled really well in the second. He's had numerous catches dropped. And he's shown that there's a bit of life left in the old dog yet.
A bit of life. I would say there's probably still quite a bit of life left in him, probably a bit more than some people were willing to give him, indeed, especially after those 3 overs when everyone said, let's retire him, right? Let him ride into the sunset. That body can't handle it anymore. But it really is a remarkable achievement. From the opposition side, I suppose, you still have to sit back and wonder. I know you're keenly keeping your eye on the match because it's still going on very much right now. And we could see wicket 601 for Jimmy Anderson. Who knows? But his 600th wicket, I mean, the Pakistani captain himself, Azhar Ali, again, I spoke about his heroics batting. Now he will just have to remember the test as being Jimmy Anderson's 600th wicket. It wasn't Shan Masood. It is indeed Azhar Ali, but you still have to revel in what a career Jimmy Anderson has had.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just from the outside, I think a lot of people, who don't follow sort of English cricket kind of, religiously, like people in England might. But I think they've kind of seen Jimmy Anderson as this slow-growing kind of master, basically. That he had the second leash on his career from 2008 onwards, and he's just gradually become this real absolute craftsman. It's not just that he's a fast bowler who's taken a lot of wickets, but he's the kind of guy, he's the kind of fast bowler who, like Wasim Akram, in fact, who used to inspire talk about just how beautiful fast bowling was. And I think when you look at Anderson, you appreciate the many colors of fast bowling. He's had his quick days, of course. He was a tear away quick when he came out onto the scene. He's still not slow, but you appreciate things about how he sets people up, about how he bowls those spectacular balls. And I've always thought that one of the greatest things about him actually is not just that he could kind of slow bore you to death, as he did very famously in that 2010-11 Ashes series in Australia when, he bowled dry and he picked up, I think, 24 wickets. I'm sure George will correct me, but I think it was about 23, 24 wickets in that series. But he could do that. So he could show you the McGrath method, kind of pegging away. But then he always had the magic ball. And it was almost like, you watch him, and even now, I'm not meaning to speak to him in the past tense, but you kind of watch him and you see what he's doing. And then the beauty of it is that at any moment, he can just bowl this delivery that, comes out of nowhere, might not be part of a plan, but it's just a ball that he can bowl because he's so damn good at it. And it's one of those big booming in-swingers that got Craig Brathwaite, actually. I don't know how long ago it was now, but I think 2015 or 2017 in the West Indies. One of those big booming in-swingers he'd bowl to him after bowling a whole over full of lovely curvy outswingers. So, it's just the fact that he could work in so many different ways. He could bore you out, but goddamn, he could give you this one sexy ball and then just sexy you out with that delivery.
I love that. Just sexy you out. And I suppose let's just have a look at some of the numbers in his career so far. And George, I think that, these stats that we're going to see just now as well kind of speaks to a point that you brought up earlier on. I forgot if it was during the West Indies or even now against Pakistan in one of our post-match hits. And if you have a look at 2014 onwards, I believe he was about 32 years old then. And you brought up the fact that since turning 30, it's almost like when your body's supposed to start letting you down, things are supposed to become more difficult. His numbers actually improve and he takes more wickets, even though he's playing more matches. And, his average is even better as well. He's got more 5-wicket hauls as well. So what do you put that down to?
Hunger, mainly. You've got to want it to do that. I think the stat is he's taken something like 335 wickets since he was 30 at an average of basically 23. And to keep going, and obviously his record in England is better than most places. Why wouldn't it be? Duke's ball and green wickets and all the rest of it. And actually, he's taken 2 fifers in his last 4 or 5 overseas tests, 3 in his last 13, I think it is. And his desire to keep improving and make the sacrifices that are inherent in improving is incredible. Because I can think of very, very few seamers who improved from the age of 32 onwards or so. Very, very few, and 2 of them are playing for this England side now. But to keep learning new tricks and to keep compensating for maybe a slight reduction in pace, because his highs aren't quite as high as they used to be. I think the wicket that reached the landmark that he got was 86 miles an hour. That's a slow wicket. So, that's quite impressive. But he's not hitting 90 anymore. And he's always found a way to compensate and to keep the body going, to do the gym work, to do the diet work, to go for the runs and bike rides. You see, he looks grumpy, doesn't he, when he's bowling? He doesn't look very often as if he's enjoying it. But I think that's because he's quite anxious. I think he cares massively. The man loves it. He loves his craft, which is why I don't think he's going to retire. I don't see him ever making the choice. I think it'll have to be made for him by injury, if I'm honest. And I think he'll be really pleased this is out of the way so he can get on with it and not have the questions, the milestone. I think he just really, really loves cricket, and it's something that he is in control of. He's an absolute master, and is quite a shy man. I think that he is very, very happy to let his skill, let his craftsmanship do the talking.
I think, George, just the one thing. I think it's helped, hasn't it, that he has only been concentrating on the one format since around that time. So I think from the age of 30 or 32 onwards, he's not really played any white ball cricket at all, right? So in terms of longevity, I think that maybe helps.
Oh, of course it does. Of course it does. Not least because he was so wholehearted in the field. The white ball game changed, of course. So he retired, or was retired, after the 2015 World Cup. And actually, that's quite interesting because he bowled in that tournament a bit like how he bowls here. And there are times I have been a bit frustrated, and I know that 1 or 2 of his colleagues have too. There are times when you think, just pitch it up a little bit more, just go for the jump, go for the kill. And he doesn't. He hates conceding runs, which is a very admirable quality in a bowler. And in that World Cup, he would bowl just back of a leg and wait for the batsman to make mistakes, but they didn't really need to. So he bowled 5 overs of 15 or whatever for the new ball, and then murder all the bowling that came afterwards. And what England needed him to do was strike and take wickets. And he didn't change as a white ball bowler. But yeah, you're right. It's been nothing but an asset to have him concentrating on the red ball format. It's allowed him to carry on, and I think he might well carry on like Richard Hadley into his 40s.
Oh, I'm sure many people would like that, or many people will fear that. And I mean, before we get to continue chatting to you guys about it, we actually have a nice little video clip here, a soundbite as well, because as we said, Azhar Ali is Jimmy Anderson's 600th star, but he has definitely taken a lot of big names in his career so far. you'll see a list that will speak to that as well. But it's amazing to see some of the big names that probably, I will go as far as to say, even feared him when they were bowling at him. And few names get bigger than Raul Dravid. This is what he had to say about what it's like facing Jimmy Anderson back in 2014.
Probably would have been similar for a lot of the other guys, was just the angle that the ball came at you. You almost felt that the angle it was coming at you was coming into you, and then it left you late. It almost forced you to play at balls. A lot of guys who bowl outswing, which you can sort of almost pick, and you can say, look, it's outside the off stump, I'll look to leave it. But with him, because he sometimes went wide of the crease, sometimes he came in a little bit closer, you almost felt that the angle was, every ball was hitting the stumps, and then it swerved away late. So you see a lot of the top batsmen, getting out on the front foot, driving the ball. I think he could be very sharp. I think when he wanted to be, there were spells that I played with Jimmy Anderson when he could hurry you. He wasn't someone that you could just plant your foot down onto the front foot. But he was clever as well. So he knew when to pull back on pace if you're looking at this kind of conditions didn't suit for him to go out and bowl really fast, and he focused on line and length, pitching the ball up, trying to get you out LBW or looking for the pot behind. But if there was something in the wicket, then he had a pretty good bouncer as well. I've seen him hit batsmen in the head quite a lot because it was a really good bouncer. It wasn't something that just went over your head. It was generally well directed towards your body. And he sometimes bowled the bouncer with the in-swinger as well, so the ball sort of followed you. It came into your body or into your ribs, which made it pretty uncomfortable to play. As someone who had all the skills, a bowler who had all the skills, and also the stamina and energy when you think about it. Later on in his career, especially, had an ability to bowl long spells and keep the pressure on you, right through the innings.
A bowler that had all the skills and the stamina and energy. High praise there coming from Indian legends Raul Dravid for Jimmy Anderson. I was going to go to you because you spoke about Jimmy having, those sexy balls here and there, and he can almost sexy you out as well. But he can also wear you down too. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people would have enjoyed the contest of him coming up against some Indian greats as well. But what about you? Any fond memories of any battles that you enjoy to see?
I have memories of an entire series actually. When England came over in 2011, 2012 to the UAE to play Pakistan, they were whitewashed. It was a closer series than that. Some of the matches were really tough. But I remember thinking, and I remember there being talk about whether even back then, and this is 8 years ago, there was talk back then of how good Broad and Anderson would be, and Anderson especially on those surfaces. There were slow surfaces, spinners dominated. But I remember them, especially Anderson's bowling throughout that series. He was just phenomenal. And I think it was later that year that they went to India. And he took, George, was it 12 wickets in the 4 series? But he was the difference, according to Dhoni, in that series between the two sides?
He was immaculate. And obviously England's spinners dominated. But he actually hit the pitch really hard. And he was a handball. Yes, MS Dhoni said at the end of the series, Anderson was the difference between the sides. So when people, and I'm so glad you've remembered that, because that's a really key moment in the career, really. When people say he's not particularly good away from England, which is nonsense, and the figures actually back it up.
Absolutely.
He did actually play a part, a big part, in an England team that won a series in India, which is phenomenal. Because it's, when's that going to happen again?
Last and only team to do it in the last, 12, 13 years?
And he didn't take a 5 or anything, but it's very simplistic to just judge things in those terms. It's absolutely right. He's got a really good record in the UAE as well. Which might mean if that next India tour, if England's tour to India is played in the UAE, which has to be possible, then he might quite fancy that. I'm sure Broad does as well.
Yeah, I think Sorry, I was just going to say what he showed there. He was finding he was maximizing whatever conditions there were. So in the mornings when England would be bowling, he would get swing, but then there would be reverse as well, and then he could rely on his cutters as well. And the thing about bowling, I think fast bowling in the modern age is that you do have to wear batsmen down. You have to play on their patience. You have to not allow them to score. Modern batsmen, more than anything, love scoring. They like seeing boundaries. They like rotating the strike. And I think what he was so good at, especially and specifically in the UAE that year, was just that he was so difficult to score off. And he had all the little tricks that he could use and try to get as much of those out of those surfaces as he could. He had those anyway, but the key was, as it was in Australia. Australia is not a great place for fast bowlers who are not Australian or South African, I'd say, but it's not a great place for them. But he's won a series in Australia, 2010, 11, did really well in the UAE on 2 tours, in fact, and has won a series in India. So people, they bring up the whole Clouderson thing, but I just think it's just a stick to beat him with for no reason, because he is an all-time great, and he's proved it, I think, pretty much everywhere he's gone.
Well,
Do you know one of the things?
Oh, George is good. Well, actually, let me bring up this quick stat too, because George can definitely speak to it as well, because it's a very interesting graphic, and it's probably the one that I suppose caught my eye the most, and it had to do with the batsmen that have been dismissed the most by Jimmy Anderson. And no, it is not Shan Masood. It is none other than the little master, Sachin Tendulkar. Imagine that, Jimmy Anderson. That is a big, big feather to have in your cap, isn't it, George?
It's incredible, but I think what it shows more than just him being a very skilled bowler is that he always wants the ball. A lot of bowlers want the ball when the wind's behind them. There's a bit of nip there. When the sun's on the back and it's going well, and then they maybe avoid the captain's eye a bit at other times. He's mad for it. He wants the ball all the time. And if I'm honest, one of the abiding memories I'm going to have is of a day when it all went horribly wrong for him. And there have been a few, of course there have. But you remember that day in the Ashes it must have been 13-14, when England got absolutely thrashed all around Australia. It was brutal. And there was a day in Perth, a crazy hot day, when George Bailey hit him for 26, 28 in an over?
Yeah, 28 in an over, yeah.
Right, and it was brutal. But you look around the field then, remember what was happening? Stuart Broad was off the field in a moon boot. It hurt his foot. Graham Swan had already, I think, bowled his last test over. His elbow had gone. He was on the pitch, but he wasn't bowling anymore, and he had to retire. And there's someone else who had a dodgy elbow or something as well. And England, they're about 1 million behind. It is literally 45 degrees. He's already bowled with a new ball. He's already come back for another spell. He's already done everything he's asked to do. And where else is the captain going to go? He goes right back to Anderson. He loves it.
Absolutely loves it indeed. We also have another graphic to show you, just talking about Jimmy Anderson's amazing numbers. George, I suppose this kind of is the point that you want to fight against, though. But the most wicket in home test, Jimmy Anderson is second there with 136 wickets behind the also great Muthaimu Litharan there. But as you said, he's still skillful, and you do get tired of when people say that he is just only good in English conditions and at home and in England test. And I suppose we did just touch on that with Oz talking about his exploits against India. But in terms of overall, because we've been looking at all these stats now and seeing him up there with a lot of the great fast bowlers of all time that we have seen, some Pakistani ones as well that Oz can talk about in a bit, some West Indian ones too that, George, we were kind of teasing at just yesterday in Polite Inquiries. Just where does he, I suppose, kind of rank with you? Because I know people are hesitant to say he's more skillful than, say, a Malcolm Marshall or, say, a Courtney Walsh. But the point is, his numbers are up there. Of course, his career has spanned a lot longer than them. But, where does he, I suppose, rank for you? Or how would you even rank him among the list of those greats?
Well, I don't feel the need to rank them. They could all be absolutely fantastic and very hard to compare. And I know that if you asked Dale Steyn about James Anderson, he would be hugely respectful and vice versa. They would just admire each other. And I mean, how do you judge a fast bowler? Is it on their absolute peak? Is it their days when they're at their very best? Because if so, there are all sorts of people who could come into contention for having great days. But what you would have to say about Anderson is the longevity, the ability to keep improving. That is incredible. That is absolutely up there with the very best. And I don't know whether. I don't even have an opinion really about whether he's better or best or who is. These are great achievements and worthy of a huge amount of praise. Absolutely unstinted, ungrudging praise.
I think Steyn was Steyn on a podcast recently where he said that Anderson I think he said that Jimmy is the more skillful bowler, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
Seem to remember something. And Dale Steyn is saying that. I mean, I know, players, greats are like self-effacing kind of the guys, but I mean that's a pretty big compliment coming from someone like Dale Steyn.
And Oz, what do you think?
It's partly just Partly
Yeah,
just
go on.
because he's going to be very gracious. I mean, he is a very, very gracious man. But at the same time, when there were arguments a few years ago, because I can't remember who it was, Troy Cooley maybe said he thought Anderson was the most skillful bowler in the world, and people misinterpreted that a bit as the best. It doesn't necessarily mean the best, but what you see with Anderson is a man who can swing it both ways, reverse swing it both ways, wobble it, hold a slow ball. I mean, the amount of skills that disguise it and then look as if he's going to bowl the reverse innie and reverse it out. I mean, the number of skills is incredible. And one of the things that emerged, well, at least I learned only in recent days, is how much cricket he watches on TV. He's a proper cricket geek. And he's always watching to see what other bowlers are doing and then trying to learn from it. So Mohammed Asif was one, I think he learned the wobble seam from years ago. And, you know, when he goes home now these days, at the end of this series, he'll no doubt be watching things like the T20 series, he'll watch the IPL, and he'll try to keep up with what other bowlers are doing, and then he'll go into the nets and try and emulate those skills. As I say again, not many people in their 30s, particularly at 38, not many people with 400, 500, 600 wickets are prepared to reinvent themselves. It takes incredible dedication to the craft. And you know, in that way, what a role model.
Oz, final thoughts?
Yeah, you know, he's up there. He's been one of my favorite bowlers to watch for some time now. I find it impossible to not watch him. And one of the things, I mean, you know, Shan Masood, we were looking at him earlier in how he's one of the batsmen most often dismissed. And, you know, he's not yet anywhere near a great international player. He's kind of building a career for himself. So, you know, you could say that, oh, he's not really, and he's a Pakistani opener. So you kind of count them down a little bit. But, you know, just the way he's worked Shan Masood out. So in 2016, he was peppering him on the outside edge, and Shan Masood was nicking off that kind of fourth stump line with different angles. This time, Shan Masood came back at Old Trafford, a little bit lucky, but he combated. You know, he kind of repelled Anderson for a bit, and he showed that he figured out what he needed to do against Anderson. So Anderson, he doesn't sit there. You know, this is a sign of he goes back and he says, right, Shan Masood has done this. This is what I'm going to do. And since then, he's had him on the pad now. So he's been beating him both sides of the bat. And he's worked it out. He's thought, okay, this is what Shan Masood's doing. I'm just going to go back and I'm going to do this. And a lot of people think that way, but then it's something to be able to do that as well. And you know, the two deliveries that he's got him out with, the two LBWs that he's got him out with, are just perfect, beautiful in-swingers to the left-handed batsman and out-swingers to a right-handed batsman. That, you know, there's so many ways that those things can go wrong. You get the wrong line, you get the wrong length, and he's pitched it perfectly straight up, first or second over, and he's got it in. And I think, you know, there are more examples of his greatness, but I think, you know, the most recent one is one we've just seen, is just the batsman has worked him out. He's gone away and said, right, I'm just going to work you out again because I'm that good. So yeah, I mean, you know, definitely one of my most favorite bowlers, fast bowlers to watch of the modern age. And whenever we do get down to rankings and we start talking about greats and stuff, he's obviously going to be up there, you know, very, very high up there.
100%. I remember speaking to him around this time or so last year for ESPN Cricket Info, and he said that the thought of retiring had not even crossed his mind yet. And I'm almost certain that if I asked him that today as well, he would tell me the exact same thing. And long may that live indeed. It's that absolute desire, that passion, that ability to reinvent yourself and come back that really makes him Jimmy Anderson. And we thoroughly have enjoyed watching him. George is getting to watch him live and direct, so we're going to let George go and carry on watching him. Oz as well, and everybody, all our viewers right now, I'm sure you want to get back to the cricket, but we had to just, you know, pay homage to the great fast bowler that is Jimmy Anderson, as he has just hit 600th test wicket, and he's the only fast bowler to have ever done that in history. So congrats to Jimmy Anderson, and thank you guys for watching.